Thank you again, everyone, for coming. We're going to get started in 1 minute. I was just telling a few people who were here before that on April 12th at 6, we're going to hold a Zoom regarding the June 7th primary election with all of this, the knowledge of County Registrar of Voters, Katrina Bartlemay, joining us. So all your questions will be answered. Well, let's get going. Please, first off, at the beginning, kind of mute yourself to eliminate distractions, and then we'll have time for questions soon. As we enjoy listening to Donne Brownsey, Donne is chair of the California Coastal Commission, and she is one of our own locals. She is going to help us to better understand the commission's role and how work is accomplished. Donne joined the California Coastal Commission through Governor Brown's appointment in 2017. She's an attorney. She founded Government Solutions Incorporated, and where she worked until she was as a lobbying firm. And she worked there until 2004, where she merged that company with Sacramento Advocates, which is a lobbying firm. And she worked there until 2015. And she was also the California lobbyist for the national solar industry. The Government Solutions and Sacramento Advocates merger, when they merged, they represented primarily the healthcare and legal interests. I'm not sure if I got all of that exactly correct. Donne, you can fix what I got wrong. So now let's welcome Donne.
Thank you so much, Cindy, and it's a pleasure to be here with everyone today. What I thought I would do is just give a very brief overview of the California Coastal Commission and then really open it up to questions because that might be a better way to get the conversation going. So I think most of you probably know that the California Coastal Commission was the result of citizen action. In fact, it was right down Highway 1 when the developers were initially doing the plans for Sea Ranch, and a number of local folks in Sonoma County were incredibly concerned that their coastline was going to be privatized. And what was happening in Sonoma County was happening up and down the state and really galvanized a citizen movement to pass Prop 20 in 1972, which essentially declared the California coast as a public resource, and that the public had a right to walk the beaches and the bluffs and to protect this incredible resource that we have here in the state of California. And I know that for many of you, if you've traveled to other states and other countries, you can really see how California is distinguished from other places because of public access to our beaches and to our bluffs and to areas in close proximity to those. So as a result of the initiative in 76, legislation was passed by the legislature, which created the Coastal Act, created transition bodies that then resulted a few years afterwards to the California Coastal Commission, which is a appointed body. There are 6 public members and 6 representatives of local government. So either boards of supervisors or county supervisors or city council people. And the governor appoints 2 local electeds and 2 public members. The governor's appointees for the electeds are the North Coast elected and the Central Coast elected, and then 2 public members. And I'm a public member. And the Speaker of the Assembly does the same, appoints 2 elected and 2 public members, and then the pro tem of the Senate, Senate Rules Committee appoints the remaining 4. Most of the commissioners have alternates. It's not required. We meet monthly, except for January. Our meetings tend to be 3 days long. Sometimes they are 3 very long days. And our framework that we are the body that interprets the Coastal Act. So under the Coastal Act, just quickly, local governments can adopt what's known as a local coastal plan, and many of them have. And so the regulation of development, which is broadly defined under the Coastal Act, so it can be either structural or it can be an activity, can either be through a permit at the local level or directly to the Coastal Commission. There's a lot of details to that, but I think the essential issue is that for depending on the community, people who are engaged in activities in the coastal zone are required, if they're either doing something that is a change of use or actual structural development, must seek and gain a permit in order to do it, so that the proposal can be evaluated to ensure that it meets all of the different elements of the Coastal Act. So there is an appeals process. We have different mechanisms to look at larger projects or projects that will span long periods of time. They're called project work plans. And we also set policy for coastal issues, and I'll get to some of that in a second. One of the issues clearly we're incredibly concerned about is sea level rise. And finally, we also act as a quasi adjudicatory body. If violations, if some we are the court of first impression for the violation of the Coastal Act in that regard. Our decisions can be appealed to a court of law, but the first stop is with us. So that's kind of a very broad overview, and I'm happy to answer. With respect to policy, one of the most important things that we are incredibly concerned about, because we are a planning agency, we really are the premier coastal planning agency in the state, is ensuring that coastal communities start serious planning for sea level rise, because it's not a future problem per se. It is a problem today. And the thing that we're incredibly concerned about is that if communities delay planning for sea level rise and looking at adaptation and not planning for coastal resiliency, their communities are going to suffer the impacts of sea level rise, because it's not just wave uprush, It's not just bluff collapse, it is groundwater intrusion. As sea levels rise, groundwater is pushed to the surface. And so we have in California, many communities have built right on the ocean or right on bluffs, and they're experiencing today flooding. And so that is an extremely important issue to the Coastal Commission. So important that the legislature has given us money and gave us a significant bump last year for local government planning grants so that they can update their local coastal plans, taking into account sea level rise. And that I can't stress how important that is. Also, we have public education grants, which we utilize to create information that's easily accessible to the public, as well as public education for school children, for communities on elements of a healthy coastal environment. So I guess I'll stop there and look forward to questions from folks in the audience.
I should have said at the beginning, if you would go down to the bottom and under reactions, you'll see that the hand signal. If you can hit that little hand, click on it, looks like it's waving. When you have a question, that makes it easier for Donna to track questions.
Great. It looks like we have a question from Val.
Okay. Wow. Sea level rise. We have some giant cities, Los Angeles and San Diego, that are sitting right on the ocean. And then we have small communities like Fort Bragg that are sitting right on the ocean. How do we motivate them to start planning and start putting it all together?
Okay, for some reason I have a big screen share.
Yeah. Marcy, you accidentally hit screen share. Can you go out of that? I don't know. Doreen, can you help? I'm not sure if you can.
Okay, while they're working on that,
Yeah.
I'll answer Val's question. That's a good question. So what we have done at the Coastal Commission, besides talk of, whoops, sorry. Okay. What we have done at the Coastal Commission is a number of things to help coastal communities prepare for sea level rise. So we've created guidance documents, so residential guidance documents, as well as critical infrastructure. And what we do, these are educational documents. We review all the issues, we provide model protocols, we try to raise the different elements of, say, sea level rise impact for transportation, sea level rise impact for water treatment services. So these are available. We also have in these LCP grants where counties are updating their local coastal plans, our staff have technical expertise. We have people who are scientists, engineers. We have an engineer, a geologist, and we provide the flood and hazard maps. We keep track of all of the armoring up and down the state. So we provide a lot of technical assistance to local communities. But yes, your point is well taken, which is a city like Los Angeles, the impact is going to be enormous because they have so many different coastal communities that their critical infrastructure is profound in terms of its size. It's huge. And so their planning is going to be incredibly complex and expensive for a city like Fort Bragg, where we don't have that many houses on the beach or right up against an eroding coastal bluff. However, our harbor is vulnerable. So there are differences, incredible differences, but the things that we're focused on right now is to really, we have been working collaboratively with different groups. We went to the Secretary of Natural Resources, and he called for a sea level rise action plan. And now the state of California is the only state in the nation where all the 17 agencies who are the sea level rise leadership group have developed a very detailed action plan to address all of the different elements of sea level rise for the different communities. Does that answer your question, Val?
Yes, it's pretty scary.
It is scary. And I think that one of the things that we try to emphasize over and over and over again at the California Coastal Commission, we must plan for it, because you have more options if you plan today than if you're responding to a crisis in the future. So we're working really hard. And the Coastal Conservancy received $500 million last year for coastal resiliency grants. And so, you know, I just want to raise that flag, people to really think about coastal resiliency proposals, because we don't get to have access to those kinds of resources very often. So this is an extraordinary opportunity. And that's why I was so glad to be able to speak to folks today to really kind of, you know, provide some important information in terms of solutions, not just problems. So, okay, next I see Carrie.
Unmute. Okay, thank you for coming. I'm glad so many people are here. So as citizens and trying to get, say, the city of Fort Bragg to access your technical assistance for the Noyo Headlands, how can we help, given the status of the land ownership, and particularly interested in the toxins that with the bluff collapse will definitely, you know, affect us all.
Good question, Carrie. There's a couple things that that folks can do. First, during the Coastal Commission hearings, for the first hour of those hearings, we accept public comment, which is when folks have up to 2 minutes to discuss with the commission issues not on our agenda, but are of significant community concern, or not, you know, just they have an opinion about something. Anyway, but it's an opportunity to communicate to the Coastal Commission the concerns regarding, let's say, in this case, the headlands and what's going on there. And it puts it on the commission's radar. The second thing that I would recommend is communicate our North Coast staff. They're based in Arcata. Melissa Kramer is the coastal manager up there. And you can just go to www.coastal.ca.gov and just find on the menu, you'll see a listing of our district offices. and it will list the phone numbers and of the staff there, and you can communicate directly, and then it percolates up from the district to the Coastal Commission staff. I think the most important thing is that the Coastal Commission hear from community members of issues of concern, because there are a number of issues that people up and down the state are concerned about. And we take those comments because we were created by members of the public. And so, and I'm a public member, so I feel a very serious responsibility to represent the public. And so when we hear from the public, it helps inform the priorities of the commission and also issues of concern that communities have with respect to their coast. Was that helpful, Carrie?
Yeah, thank you so much.
You are so welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, next I have Nicole.
You mentioned funds allocated for education. I was wondering if you could describe how that education is being rolled out.
Sure. They're called whale tail grants, and you can go onto the commission's website and it will explain how to apply for a grant, what kind of grants. So we give grants for everything for bringing kids to the beach and doing ocean education. We give money for groups that teach kids how to sail or to boogie board or surf, how to do science experiments, you know, how to provide educational materials. So they just went through a funding cycle, and our own NOYO Center received some whale tail grant monies for a summer school, for an ocean education summer school. And those are really important because we feel that those investments create our future ocean stewards, you know, by creating an appreciation and an understanding of the coastal environment in children. In particular, we do fund a lot of programs that bring kids in from non-coastal communities. So inland, they may be in a coastal county, but they may never have been to the beach. And so we bring those kids over to, you know, to the beach for the day, and educators talk to them about the coastal environment. So those are a lot of the things that we do. Thank you. Okay, next is Susan and Gary.
You mean Susie?
Yes, okay.
Okay, great. I'm just curious.
have to move the
you have
cursor
an
over to unmute.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Susan.
Thank you very much for being here. I can speak on behalf of the people in this call and other people that we really appreciate your making yourself available this way. Also, as background, I wanted to let you know that in 1972, as a high school student, I gathered signatures to qualify the Coastal Commission on the ballot. So I've been a long-time environmentalist. I am, though, becoming critical of the Coastal Commission. Now that I live here on the coast, I'm going to give you two ways that I'm now critical of the Coastal Commission. And if you can respond to them or take my criticism back, that would be great. Number one, we would like to put solar panels on our house. And we're in Manchester on the bluff side of Highway 1. We have been told by other neighbors who've done it that they had to apply for a Coastal Commission permit in order to put solar panels on their roof, and the permit costs $5,000. To put solar on a roof, we've been told is $30,000. That creates a really high extra
Okay.
cost. It creates a chilling effect for us to do something that's good for the environment. And, you know, the panels would be on our roof, not up from our roof. So if you could speak to that, if there's a way to change it, because right now we're not doing it. Because that's a really exorbitant extra cost.
Right. No, I understand that. And for something like that, where you're not really changing the structure of the house and you are adding solar panels, it is possible for you to get a waiver or a de minimis permit. So you should talk to the North Coast office about that. Now, I'm not saying that's for sure what's going to happen, but I think that for de minimis kinds of changes, I mean, putting solar panels on a roof seems to me de minimis if you're not changing the roof line, or you're not adding them, you know, adding a structure to add, to put the solar panels on. So why don't you talk to the North Coast folks about that and go to them directly? I think the thing that people do react to are the costs of the permits. The problem for the Coastal Commission is we are an incredibly small agency. During Governor Deukmejian's years in the 80s, he was not a fan of the Coastal Commission, so he reduced the staff by 50%. It hasn't really expanded very much since then, and we are required by state law to fund some of our activities. And so that's how the cost of providing this government service is passed to you know, members of the public. So I hear what you're saying. I totally hear. It's already an enormous investment for solar, and you know, to add to that cost is incredibly difficult. So
Yeah, thank
I
you.
hope that. Oh, of course, I totally understand that. Okay.
And then-
Oh, did you have, you wanted to say
I
something
have one
else?
other question,
Mhm.
or one other concern, is affordable housing on the
Yes.
coast.
Yes.
And the Coastal Commission's requirements are not helping. They are
Okay.
hindering that. In the city of Point Arena, I have been told that the Coastal Commission has, I don't know the right word, insisted or said that the maximum density for the city of Point Arena can be 7.5 dwelling units per acre. Having worked for the State Department of Housing and Community Development, I can tell you that that does not create the kind of workforce housing that we need. We have lots of businesses that can't find staff. We have a medical office, Redwood Coast Medical Services, that cannot retain a dental hygienist, in some cases doctors, but dental hygienists and other staff because they can't find affordable housing. So it's created this wonderful organization that I took part in creating has become a monster that's made it very difficult for people to live on the coast. It not only impacts the people in the workforce who needs the housing, but then it impacts all the rest of us because we can't get the services we need.
I'm really glad that you raised that point, Susan, because this perhaps is one of the most persistent myths about the Coastal Commission. And so I hope that after my explanation, you may not think of us as monsters. But here's the reality. The Coastal Commission has expedited every single affordable housing project that has come before it. In almost all instances, it is the local government who has thrown up the challenges before the project. Because this was something that I had to respond to last year in Sacramento. And so I asked our staff to go back and look at all of the affordable housing projects in the last 5 years. Because initially we had Affordable Housing Authority, and that was taken away from us by statute, by the Mello Act, because the local governments did not want the Coastal Commission to have the authority to require affordable housing on the coast. So our hands are kind of tied. We can only respond to the projects that come before us. And often what we find out is we're not the holdup. The holdup is either at the local government level, because there's conflict about whether or not they want or what type of affordable housing they want there, or there are lawsuits, which we're not even a party to. But we get blamed by everybody on the issue of affordable housing. And I want to assure you, we have pushed the affordable housing, our authority, as far as we can. We're incredibly aggressive on affordable housing, especially with respect to ADUs and JDUs and not permitting a loss of density. We think that there should be density in the areas in the coastal zone that are already developed. So I just want to underscore to you that I have heard this complaint before, and I just, with details, and I'd be happy to hear from you, perhaps some specifics, but in almost every case, it is not the Coastal Commission who has held up the affordable housing. It's the local government process. So look, we want to do more on affordable housing. We would like to have our authority back so that we can require more affordable housing. We right now, as I said, we expedite those programs when they come before us. Our staff, they move to the front of the line, we move them through. And we also are fixated on affordable accommodations. That's the other kind of endangered species in California, which is often development wants to put in high-end hotels that only the very wealthy can afford to stay in. And we require a pretty significant mitigation, or a percentage of the rooms be affordable. So I just hope you'll take a second look, and you can talk with the Coastal Commission staff more about this. And certainly Cindy has my email and she can give it to you. So, okay.
Well, we had a discussion on Zoom about this very topic a couple of days ago with our county supervisor.
Mm-hmm.
And so I hope that there can be a dialogue between the Coastal Commission and local government, particularly in Mendocino County, about this very topic of affordable housing. And I'll I won't go on anymore because I know that there are other people who have questions, but I'm just hoping that there can be an open dialogue about ways to work together to create affordable housing.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you.
We would look forward to that. I'm going to go to Susie because I think you thought I called on you before.
Yes, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it.
Sure.
2 questions. One would be about the sea level rising. What kind of plans are coming together to work with that? And then the other is the skunk train. Really interested to hear your involvement with that or how that's going.
Oh, okay. So with respect to sea level rise, I mean, that's a really kind of, we're doing absolutely everything that we can to educate local governments and local communities about sea level rise, because for, California's coastal communities are incredibly diverse. So, it's really very local driven. For certain, like in Southern California, you have these intensely developed coastal cities, many of whom they have housing on the beach. So, I mean, we try to explore with them, just be aware. We've asked local communities, please educate your community, get information out about sea level rise, and then start the planning process, because for every community it's going to be a little bit different. But we have places where we just did a project about a year ago down in Sonoma County, Gleason's Beach. The Highway 1 was ready to fall into off the bluff. And, these things take time. And that's why we're trying to say to communities. So that project started 20 years ago, and they finally built the community consensus, and we approved it unanimously because it was a wonderful project. It turned what will be the old Highway 1 into part of the coastal trail. It's going to clean up all the rubbish on the beach from the houses that have fallen off the cliff onto the beach. It's going to create a nature-based condition for Scotts Creek that runs in at that point. And that's something that we're trying to educate communities about, which is to look at nature-based solutions to reclaim those wetlands, reclaim the dunes, build up your dunes, look at all kinds of solutions. But, right now, like up in Humboldt, in Eureka, that bay is rising. Right today, we have 5 days where 101 floods. Okay. And also they had an old railroad there, but they ran all their utility lines along that railroad. So, I mean, they've got some significant issues there, and it affects that entire region. So we're trying to really communicate with local communities, not only to work as a community and educate and plan, but also to work as a region to educate yourselves, prioritize, because if Highway 1 is flooding outside of Eureka, it affects Arcata. It affects, right, Crescent City. It affects, right? So we're trying to get folks to understand these are not insignificant impacts from sea level rise, and we're really concerned. So we have been churning out studies and documents, working with our partners, state and federal partners. In fact, if you go on our website, you'll see a reference to a report where we have been working collaboratively with Caltrans for a long time, and we worked with NOAA to show the impact of sea level rise, not only on the state of California, but other states, and what you can do working in collaboration with each other.
Fabulous.
So that's just kind of a sampling of what we're doing on sea level rise. On the skunk train, we're going to have to see. We've not heard from the community. So I think that would be something that would be important. Their development plans we know are circulating around the community, but we've not seen anything before us. Our staff has had some conversation with the skunk train on some technical issues, but at this point, the Coastal Commission has not received anything specific with respect to the skunk train. Okay, so let's see, Achaya. I hope I said that right. Yeah, hi.
So I guess that does kind of segue into what I wanted to ask is what are you? I'd like to know your stance on like the current Redwood hiking trail that they are actively tearing up miles and miles of rail. I'd just like to know your stance on that, because personally I think that is making it far more difficult to even attempt to go into having some kind of rail-based public transportation around the area. I'm from Fort Bragg too, and I've lived here my entire life. So I know how very isolated it is around here. There's just the only way to get, to Ukiah is over very windy roads, either by car or on bus. It just seems strange that there hasn't really been any sort of effort put toward actually having a rail system that can at least get to Ukiah.
Okay, well, rail system to Ukiah is kind of outside the coastal zone, but with respect to the Great Redwood Trail, I personally support it. I think it's a great project. That railroad north of Willits is not viable at all. And so I believe that this would be an incredible resource for not only the Redwood Trail, but also for the coastal trail and the coastal communities. At this point, I don't see, and I looked at the Mendocino transportation plan, which made it very clear that there really isn't viable passenger or freight service at this time or anytime in the future. So, we have an excursion train here with the skunk train, and it's not even connected. So it's really just kind of a recreational situation. So, but recreational resources are really important to Californians. And
tourist trap.
I'm sorry?
I was saying tourist trap. It's
more
look, along the line.
Here's the reality. These are going to be, I think, really important, and hopefully there's going to be a lot of community debate and discussion and public education around these issues, because this really defines communities and how they see themselves. And so I think it's important that there be high level of community involvement from all sides. And I just think in terms of the Great Redwood Trail, that it's going to become an incredible resource to Northern California. And so, and anything that can educate people on the beauty of our redwood forests, I think is a good thing. So thank you very much, Achaya. I'm going to move to Judy. Judy Tarbell. Oh yeah, it's the unmuting.
Judy, unmute.
I'm trying.
Yeah,
There.
there you go.
Gee, I almost put myself in the trash. Let's see. I live in Casper and have for really quite a long time. And we have a number of problems which I think the Coastal Conservancy can help. And this was supposed to not happen. And so I'll try to be brief, but they all revolve around the fact that, as many people have brought up, we are in desperate need of affordable housing. So one of the things that has occurred in Ukiah is that the local coastal plan has not been updated for over 15 years, and they're not giving out new permits until it is. And so that has obviously squished a great deal of creative thinking. I'm wondering if the Coast Commission could just bypass the county if it isn't going to get its LCP updated, or if it could fund the updating and ensure that it get updated in a timely manner. So that's one suggestion or thought. The other is there have been some recent purchases of large 20-acre tracts of property by people who would like to develop them. 2 of those tracts are each 20 acres, and they are zoned RR2. So is there a way that that zoning can be changed directly, maybe by the Coast Commission, rather than having to go through the local coastal plan or a non-existent local coastal plan?
Okay, those are really good questions. Okay, first, we would rely on the local community with respect to the zoning. So I'm answering your second question first.
Okay.
Because that's really a local government authority. When we look at a project, we look at it in relationship to the county's local coastal plan and their ordinances. Okay, so to ensure that it's in compliance with that, we would say consistent with that, as well as the Coastal Act. So we would review it for all of those elements. Now, with respect to your first question, we do have grants. We have local, yes, we have local government sea level rise update. So they're called LCP, Local Coastal Plan Amendment grants. They're really geared towards helping communities pay for these updates, to provide staff expertise and to give them money so that they can either hire the expertise or hire the expertise or just pay for the staff, to dedicate staff to do the updates. So we definitely have it. It's called our local government planning grants. You can go onto our webpage and you'll see local governments, and then you'll see 2 buttons, and one is planning grants, and it gives you all the information right there.
And would it be too outrageous for a community such as Casper, which has a governing board of the Casper community, to actually apply for that grant and provide it to the county?
No, the county would have to, if you're under the county plan, you would have to get the county, but you could work with the county and, push them to do it. But there is money there, and it's intended really for those communities that, are slim in terms of resources. It's really there to help.
So one of the things that Cashmere community is interested in, well, several, but one of them is to have a community land trust, which will be tied in with a countywide community land trust. It is
Mhm.
actually now just being set up. Do you think that the existence of a community land trust and an interested property owner to have it on his property would be a useful incentive? I mean, is that something that we could do directly to the Coast Commission, or do we still have to go?
No, you still have to go through, unless you were on public lands.
Okay,
We just don't have, we don't have primary jurisdiction unless
Okay.
it's public land. Or beach, or, bluff, or estuary, or whatever. So, yeah,
Okay.
you would still have to work with the county.
well, here's a really wild thought. There's a 72-acre California State Park right smack in the middle of Casper.
Mhm.
Is that public land in the sense that we could have a community land trust built on the state park?
Well, you would have to then talk to Parks, because
yeah.
they are going to be very, the thing that Parks is the most concerned about, rightfully, I think, is that when people want to put their land under Parks, then they're responsible for managing it. So, so
okay.
they'll have to work something out, but I don't know. I think this is kind of getting outside of my my knowledge base, Judy, but I do think you might want to call Melissa Kramer, as I noted earlier in this session. She is our North Coast
Yeah,
coastal manager, and with respect to these questions, if she doesn't know the answer, she will get you in touch with the Coastal Commission staff, who could talk you through all of these issues. And I just want to say that that's something that people often are reluctant to do, which is call Coastal Commission staff, but they're super knowledgeable, and they're happy to share that knowledge. And to answer questions, and to give you specific advice, so you'll know how to go forward, and not spin your wheels on things that might not work.
okay, so then I have one last thing, which is
Okay.
not one of these crazy deals, but I believe that there's a second unit allowable within the coastal zone for people who live on a certain size property, so that they can have a house that's 800 square feet. Is that correct?
Are you talking about the ADU ordinance? Yes, we passed adopted the Mendocino County ADU ordinance. And so I can't remember what month we did that in, but you can go, again, call Melissa Kramer and say, hey, can you send me a copy, via email of the Mendocino, and then she could actually walk you through, so that you would know all of the particulars on the ADU ordinance.
Wonderful.
Yeah, no, we.
Thank you for that. I mean,
Oh,
I'm very thankful the Coast Commission put that in place.
absolutely. Oh, yeah, yeah. No, I remember reading it, but you have to remember, I read ADU ordinances and short-term rental lease ordinances and all kinds of things. Just to give you some perspective, for our 3-day meetings, usually there's a minimum of 1,000 pages of report, which does not include the exhibits and the addendums and the correspondence.
Yeah.
So it's like a ton of reading. And so, I always want to remember everything, but those days are gone. So anyway, but Melissa, she'll know.
Great,
Okay.
thanks so much.
You bet, Judy. It was my pleasure. Okay, Linda. You're still on mute. There you
Okay.
go.
Well, thank you for being here, and I'm sorry I got here late. I was on another Zoom, but I just wanted to comment on the skunk train, because there has been a huge response all up and down the coast from our community against the corporate plans to turn the Fort Bragg headlands into a rich tourist destination. I support their half-mile little jaunt back and forth for the tourists, but this does not make them a railroad. They're bypassing all local and coastal laws and ordinances. I have written to the Coastal Commission about this. I know several people on this Zoom have done the same thing. And now I hear that the skunk train is planning another mile of railroad from their depot to Glass Beach. So tourists will completely bypass downtown. All the small businesses will hurt as a result of this. And they will be putting up their own kiosk shops, etc., for their own gain. And I guess I just want to say I disagree that there has been no comment about the skunk train. There's been huge comments, and maybe we're sending it to the wrong people.
Linda, first, I think we had 2 public speakers total on the skunk train. I have not seen any correspondence on the skunk train. So one thing you can do is you can send your letters or your emails or whatever documents you have to any of the coastal commissioners. For instance, mine is Donne, D-O-N-N-E .Brownsey, Brown like the color, S-E-Y, at coastal.ca.gov. And for all the coastal commissioners, you can send it directly to us.
Right.
Yeah, that way. And I think that is very helpful for the coastal commissioners, because they do, we keep track of who's communicating on what. So let me give you an example. There are 2 issues which we have been receiving an incredible amount of email on. One are the bluffs in Del Mar, where there is the Amtrak that is on an eroding bluff. And there is a huge controversy because the North County Transit District, which is responsible for that leg of that railroad, wants to fence the bluff. So the people who live in Del Mar have been accessing the beach across those railroad tracks for, sorry, that's my dog running around in case you're hearing something weird. And that has caused enormous conflict within the community. I probably for the last 6 months have received, I would say, anywhere from 50 to 100 emails a week.
Okay.
On that issue. Okay, so that puts it on my radar. Okay. Now, of
That's
course,
very helpful. Can
Yeah.
I ask the Zoom group if they are against the current skunk train plans to all raise your hands, just so Donna gets a feeling.
Okay, I appreciate that.
I mean, because I know this is this is a group that really cares about the coast, and
Right, right. No, I appreciate that. And, I will communicate that, to the other commissioners. I think the issue is that on these issues, it's so helpful if all the commissioners here, because then it's just not, this is something going on in Donna's town, right? So that's why I care about it.
thank you.
So it's very helpful when there's community. And the other issue I was going to just mention is a seal issue, a seal rookery issue, where the city of La Jolla is not really monitoring the human traffic onto the seal rookery, and it's really split a lot of the folks in that community, some who want it more heavily regulated and the wildlife protected, versus others who don't want to lose the access to their beach. But the fact is the seals have moved in, and that's wildlife. And so we receive it. I receive at least 20 emails and documents a week on that issue. So that has become, and as do all the other commissioners. So that has become something that has, skyrocketed in terms of our concern. So I just offer those as suggestions, examples. Okay, thank you, Linda. I appreciate that. Okay, George?
Yes.
Whoops, you froze. Did George freeze?
Looked like we were being encouraged to write executive staff rather than all of the members. So I will modify a tutorial that I've created about getting out to the Coastal Commission, because we will adjust accordingly. Thank you very much for this update. It's really
well,
helpful.
And I would definitely include staff, but
yeah.
Please communicate with all the commissioners.
We'll put everybody's in there. It's not that difficult to make that adjustment. What I wanted to ask you about today was there is this very exciting project, which I know you guys are very close to. The Toxic Tides project that's happening at UC Berkeley is fantastic. And I've been looking at it, and they're really looking at the places along the coast that are really in jeopardy of with the sea level rise and the pressures on groundwater and everything. The impacts on toxic ponds adjacent to the ocean are becoming very alarming in certain communities like Oxnard and others. It's just kind of, it's like, why haven't we dealt with this? But I sort of feel the same about our situation here in Fort Bragg. You probably are aware that for 20 years, this community has been actively involved in planning and really trying to envision an appropriate and a careful and a healthy reuse of the Noyo headlands. And we have a very serious toxic mill pond and two even more toxic smaller ponds below that are just about at sea level with this old beach berm that's there. And when I have spoken to staff at the Toxic Tides project, they have said, you should encourage the coastal community. So I'm doing it right now, but I've also written about this, and I'm going to encourage others to do so as well. We should try to get you folks and the staff or whatever is appropriate to identify the Fort Bragg Mill Pond and Ponds 6 and 7, which are actually right at sea level, just behind a completely flaky old beach berm that has no integrity whatsoever and is going to be toast with sea level rise. We should have our community identified as an area of concern. I think right now it's just identified with a question mark. And So I'm working on the toxic tides folks, but if there's anything that you can do, and I am following up on your advice about Del Mar is amazing. I think last month they had over 30 comments. And so it just went on and on and on. And the month before, I remember I had to wait for just a better part of an hour to make my comment that I made. And, you know, we really are looking at the opportunities here for a community that could really do some exciting ideas of restoration, creek daylighting, and creating wildlife corridors, and really having a beautiful, far more, you know, restored open space. But we really have this cleanup thing that has to be dealt with. And unfortunately, during most of this period, the property's been owned by a really irresponsible, extremely wealthy Koch Industries. And so we have not been able to get any traction. I think after 20 years of trying to get something to happen and having the property owners stalling and not doing anything, I think that we're at a position where we can make I'm hopeful that we can make appeals to the Coastal Commission, to the you know, the State Department of Natural Resources, and get some help because throughout this 20 years of cleanup concern and, you know, trying to plan for a future that we know involves sea level rise and climate change in a big way, it's always been the case that all the government agencies say, well, we know who the polluter is, so you have to get them to do the job. But after 20 years of, I consider it malfeasance and bad behavior, you know, we're concerned and looking for other avenues. So people will be reaching out to you, I'm sure, on these issues. And I'm not sure there's much you can say, but sort of in the same spirit that Linda was suggesting of hands raised, you know, I just want you to hear this again, and we will, you know, we'll be communicating with the Coastal Commission. And I'll tell you, as a community, we aspire to being as diligent as communities like Del Mar and others that are communicating with you regularly, because we realize how crucial your organization is. I'm not sure I've given you a question you can answer there, but I know I wanted to convey this. And if there's anything you'd like to say about it, I will shut up. Thank you. Thanks for being in.
Of course. Thank you, George. One, the toxic tides information I think is super, super important. And that report with respect to sea level rise also had an additional component, which is really important, which is it really drew the distinction of that often those toxic sites were right next door to environmental justice communities, so disadvantaged communities, and that there was going to be a disproportionate impact with sea level rise, particularly on for groundwater. So it's not necessarily, like I said before, wave uprush. So it's also groundwater rise, which will then push the toxic closer to the surface, which means that the situation becomes even more perilous in terms of the management of those. So I think it's great, George, that you're put that on the radar of this group. I would also say that if any project comes before the Coastal Commission, we look at all of the different let's see, what's the word? Not elements, but we look at it. We do a deep dive in terms of the geology, the structural land issues, the state of the land, the presence of hazardous waste, the impact of sea level rise. So the Coastal Commission, for any permit, but certainly if something as large as the development project on the headlands, I mean, that is going to be a very complex analysis. So, the presence of hazardous waste sites are not going to be ignored. They wouldn't be ignored in any analysis that the Coastal Commission would do on any project. So I think that I don't think people understand how complicated the coastal permit are in terms of the analysis that the staff must do as required by the Coastal Act. And they must cover all of those grounds in the Coastal Act and present it to the Coastal Commission when they make their recommendation. So
Thank you.
you bet. Thank you, George. Okay, Mark.
Thank you for, first of all, for making yourself available. I know with Zoom, the opportunity to speak to somebody at the Coastal Commission has become a lot easier, which I truly appreciate. I guess my main question is, if the skunk train is designated as, I don't know what the term is, common conveyance or railroad, does the Coastal Commission actually have any control over it in regard to the area that is within the Coastal Commission's domain?
The short answer to that is yes. We do have authority over development in the coastal zone. So, and it is my understanding that the commission staff have communicated with Mendocino Railroad that they are an excursion line and not a freight/passenger service railroad. So, and this was over another issue. I think this was a couple of years ago. And so, but under California law, and we clearly have regulatory authority, as well as even if there were, it was deemed like a federal issue, we still have consistency authority, which means we look at, are they meeting the California law under the provision of the Coastal Zone Management Act, and we are the designated regulatory authority. So,
thank you.
And doesn't look like there are any other questions. We have a few minutes. No? Doesn't look like there's any other questions. Well, oh, Jade.
Let me turn my face on and my microphone. There's an issue that came up locally where one of the farms, one of the agricultural folks, established a hip camp to help pay their bills during the pandemic. And it's a long and complicated issue. But at some point, I guess it was the Coastal Commission decided that they hadn't completed some sort of a permitting process that was going to cost in the vicinity of $10,000 to continue to do that, and basically got told to stop. What is the Coastal Commission's position on agricultural operations within the coastal zone, supplementing their income with things like hip camp or vacation rentals on the farmland?
Okay, what kind of camp was it?
Hip camp is it's an online service that provides booking for campsites So the farm actually just brushed out a couple of
Oh,
flat spots in the fields, put chips on them, and designated them campsites. No fires, etc. You know, basically dry camping. But it was an alternative to the campgrounds with their smoke and their, you know, radios and tape decks and boom boxes,
oh, got it.
so
Got it.
forth. And you got to camp in the middle of a working farm with nice people.
Right. Okay. So first, if it's in the coastal zone and it's like an intensity of use change, which that would be, and certainly a development change because they developed the site to be a campground per se, then yes, you do need a permit. Typically, what the Coastal Commission would do in that case is determine whether or not that was an appropriate use, because retaining agriculture in the coastal zone is a high priority. And so is it really consistent with that? If it was, and they could find that it is consistent. I'm not saying they wouldn't necessarily, and certainly they would also look at the short-term rental policies and see if it was consistent with that. So, I mean, they would have to do an analysis, and that does cost money. So that's primarily why it would be required. Does that answer your question?
Sort of halfway. I mean, if the priority is for agriculture in the coastal zone to remain in the coastal zone, it has to be able to pay for itself in the coastal zone. So it's, you know, there's a balance point there, but it's a very expensive balance point for farmers who are counting their nickels and dimes.
No, I totally get it. No, it's really hard. I get that. Okay, Anne Marie?
Hi, Donna. Thanks for being available to us. I am speaking as an individual, but also as a member of Albion Bridge Stewards. And we started off basically wanting to preserve the 77-year-old historic Albion River Timber Trestle Bridge. And this involvement has made us realize that, you know, there is an attempt by Caltrans to widen not only individual communities like Gualala and Cleone, but also the highway wherever possible under the pretext to make it safer, which we believe is only going to encourage people to drive faster and create more accidents. So the other issue is not only to widen the highways, but, and there's many projects in the works and have been in the past. For example, also an ADA project in Fort Bragg, which would have widened downtown Main Street in Fort Bragg, but also the bridges. And so there's a lot of bridges which need work, but to want to replace the Albion River Bridge, for example, with a concrete bridge that is twice as wide seems insane. And we have a lot of tourism because people come here because of the beauty of this area. And then, you know, currently there's projects for tearing down the Elk Creek Bridge. There is the Salmon Creek Bridge is Caltrans wants to tear down. The Hare Creek Bridge definitely needs attention. Jack Peters Creek Bridge will be widened, Little River Bridge, and on and on. You know, for some of the projects, mitigated negative declarations are pursued where there should be EIRs, environmental impact reports. And, you know, we know that Caltrans is paying the Coastal Commission up to 10 staff people. And it seems almost like a conflict of interest if, you know, Coastal Commission has Caltrans money and then approves basically a project. So I think there's a lot of concern about this constant widening of highways, towns, bridges, and the conflict of interest with Caltrans and the Coastal Commission.
Thank you, Anne Marie. I'm gonna address the conflict of interest so that people understand what that is. It's the Coastal Commission has had a contractual relationship with Caltrans for many, many, many years, and that pays for, I think, maybe a staff person, one, not 10, one, to help Caltrans in terms of working with the Coastal Commission. Their projects are incredibly complex, take years and years and years, and it's a way to reimburse the Coastal Commission for the work that has to be done on these projects. And so what it does is it actually saves state monies because it ensures that the Coastal Commission staff who are working on the transportation issues are helping Caltrans understand how to comply with the Coastal Act and the elements of the Coastal Act to try to reduce the number of the amount of time or the number of technical issues where they're going to need to go back and revise their proposal. With respect to the widening of the highways, I don't really know about that. I do know in some instances, and I'm not saying this is the case, Anne Marie, and all of the examples that you gave, but I think what Caltrans has adopted a multimodal framework for when they put in new bridges or repair bridges to accommodate pedestrians and bicycles. So, I mean, I think that's a positive thing. Certainly, you know we have a lot of people. I don't, frankly, it scares me to think of people on their bikes down Highway 1 where there's like, 6 inches on margin in terms of the shoulder, but it's really intended, I think, to provide safety for that multimodal framework. So that's I know that's true in different parts of the state. So that's really all I can offer you. I can't really respond to all of the other bridges and projects that you mentioned. So because I don't know about those. So and I can't really address the Albion Bridge because that's a current project, and I don't want to do an ex parte with you on that. But I'm happy to talk to you at another time about that, and then I can file an ex parte. So, okay. So we have Achaya's back. Did you have another question, Achaya, or a statement?
Yeah, I've heard people around here claim that the Coastal Commission has been essentially a force that has been pushing against more cannabis and hemp growth in the area. I was wondering if that is true.
Oh, totally not. We don't take a position. What we do, though, is that if there are changes in cannabis ordinances, which is in the coastal zone, if it's a change in intensity of use, usually when we see a cannabis permit is because someone's building, a cannabis operation in the coastal zone. But we don't, whether it's cannabis or radishes that they're growing, in that facility or on that farm, we don't really care, except that there are usually ordinances, there are elements of cannabis that have been added to the local coastal plans. So we have to take a look and see if they're in compliance with that. But we're agnostic on cannabis. Okay. You're on mute, Ichaya.
I just said, yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Where are we? We're at 5:23. So any other questions? We've got 5 more minutes. All right, well, then I'll just wrap up and say, I hope that I provided some context. You can see me as a resource. I live here in this community. I am a public member. I'm happy to respond to questions or direct you to appropriate, people who can answer your questions better, or resources that you would find helpful. I am going to, just say that this is we're at an inflection point because of sea level rise and climate change. And I have spent so much time in the last 4 years really trying to communicate through my role as a coastal commissioner in those meetings to the public, the necessity to plan for sea level rise. And because I do believe that with the right planning, with communities, active participation, and communities educating themselves, that they can develop strategies for coastal resiliency and for adaptation that will ensure that their communities continue to thrive and to, sea level rise is coming. People often criticize us, the Coastal Commission, because of generating information about sea level rise and asking communities to plan. And what we say to people is, we're not in charge. The ocean is in charge. Mother Nature is in charge. What we're saying is, we know how important your communities are to you. We know how important your houses are to you, your businesses, right? Your beaches. I mean, we're desperately trying to save beaches because hard armoring, putting up seawalls, is accelerating the loss of our beaches. And so we want to go into this next phase that all of us are going to be facing with the best tools that we can. And I think together with involved communities, and I do think that Fort Bragg is an involved community, and with our sister villages of Casper and Mendocino and Westport and Cleon, that we can plan successfully for sea level rise. And that's what I spend my time thinking about and hoping that I represent the public in a good way in terms of that. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Donna. I can't tell you how wonderful this presentation was for us to hear. And you've inspired us. So the website and Donna's email are in chat, but we will also put it in our next newsletter that will go out early in April. So look for that, and get in touch if there's anything that, yes, Jerry wants to say something.
I just wondered if Donna could repeat the email contact for Melissa Kramer.
Yes, it's Melissa.Kramer. So that's KRAEMER.coastal.ca.gov.
Thank you.
And mine is Donne, DONNE.Brownsey @coastal.ca.gov. And really see us See us as a resource. That's what we are. We're not just a regulatory agency. We are your coastal resource.
That's
Okay.
wonderful.
That's great. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
And maybe
Thank
we'll
you.
think of some other reason to bring you back.
I'd be,
Soon.
I'd be happy to come back. I'd be
Okay,
happy to come back.
let's plan
Anyway.
on something.
Okay, take care, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.